how we currently view a strong man is someone who's composed, but really strength is a little bit of being able to be vulnerable and then put yourself back together again.
Because I know a lot of people, if I said, bro, you need therapy, like, what the fuck you talking
It's
about?
like an
Especially
insult,
guys,
right? This illusion of like my partner, like Mindy was saying, is supposed to make me happy. It's a false premise.
What do you think women do to cope? Because you don't really see women that are getting involved in life of crime as often in our community. You don't see women getting involved in substance abuse as often as at the rate of men.
I think a lot of times when someone's a mental health practitioner, it seems like they're going to be like heavy on the gentle parenting, heavy on like be soft, be nurturing, let the kid cry and all that. I don't think one extreme to another is appropriate.
You brought up people pleasing, right? And that's something in the Punjabi community that's massive. Like, I feel like everyone does it. Everyone has someone in their family that does it.
When you're talking about that, what does it make you feel physically? Where do you feel it? Is there a knot in your stomach? Is there heaviness in your chest? You just took a deep breath. So
no, I feel it.
Yeah.
You're making me uncomfortable. No, I'm joking.
But I feel like the kids now are way more sensitive.
Like, we're both parents, right? You have kids?
Yeah.
Okay, do you think we're fully there yet? Because I'd say we're not.
I think I am, right? Like,
Welcome to another episode of Limelight. Today we have a very, very special guest. Amrita, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. You're doing, you came across my feed and I was super like, wow, this woman is speaking about things that no one else is talking about. And that's, it's nice to see. I think there's a lot of brain rot online. And I think that you are literally like fighting that battle to make the internet a more educational place, especially for our community. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was really kind. I wasn't expecting that from you.
I guess we can get started from kind of your beginnings and what got you into kind of your career path and what kind of led you there and where'd you get started, where'd you go to school and whatnot.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't start in psychology. I spent most of my 20s just working with family business. I got married fairly young, I guess young now. And then I joined my husband's family business. I was 24 when I got married.
It's pretty young, yeah.
Yeah. And So then worked in the family business. I had finished my undergrad by then, and then I always wanted to go back. I really wanted to get my master's. It just felt unfinished. So it was like that whole cliche, stereotypical thing where you're having the dream that you're writing the exam and you can't finish the exam and you're like,
never had that dream.
Okay, then I'm just a geek. And that was what I used to dream about.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to do that. And then 2018, I just went for it and decided to go back and got my master's and then did nonprofit for a bit, worked with the Punjabi community that way, and then ended up branching off into private practice.
Nice. So you are talking a lot about Punjabi families in your content. Is it because most of your work is with Punjabi clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge gap in content for Punjabi families and just gaps in resources for sure. And I think at one point I was always looking for stuff to either send to clients or to even just like learn stuff for myself. And it's just not available. So then I always liked public speaking. I like writing a lot, any form of expression. And then it just kind of authentically started happening. I just started putting videos out there. It was actually the Sweet Bobby documentary that was interesting enough for me to want to make a video. I've since deleted it.
Why?
Well, I'm kind of...
did you get comments that you didn't like?
No, it was
Did they
not
call
that.
you sweet? Did they call you Simran Bogle?
It was... I was a little too relaxed. Like, I'm like laying in bed making the video. It was
Those
not
are they probably popped
proper
off.
enough.
They probably popped off.
Yeah, but...
we should do that.
Yeah, you guys
Together.
should. That should be your next segment. That should be your next segment.
We usually do that after the podcast, but we can do it during this.
Oh my goodness. Mindy's like, I'm out of here.
no.
Mindy's gonna join us.
It'll just remind me of prison. Jokes, right? Yeah.
That's awesome. No, so you were saying there's a gap in the community for that kind of content. You were saying,
yeah, there is.
It started with Sweet Bobby. You were saying, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was just kind of like a lighthearted, funny thing, and then people kind of resonated with what I had to say. The main message that I was trying to say is there's two sides to every story. I always like to be very pragmatic. I don't like to be biased and just like run with one side of things. So I was just explaining that like it's not nice to just villainize someone who clearly has mental health issues. So was her name Simran? The
Yeah,
one that, the cousin. So clearly there's maybe something going on there psychologically, and nothing happens in isolation. But for viewership, I think they really, dramatized it and put a certain spin on it.
Well, I was gonna say, I think that actually both of them have mental health issues because for you to be in a relationship with someone like that, you know how you said you were dreaming about writing that exam. Kirit was probably dreaming about having that wedding that she always dreamed of, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's mental health in both, and I think that the fact that Netflix did this huge documentary, I was kind of pissed off at the beginning because, I judged the documentary before it came out, and I'm like, clearly, obviously, this is not true. Yeah. And if it's true, it's like an extreme case of mental health of both. And I think that the wish for finding love for Kirit was extremely like obsession as well.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah, that was basically my takeaway is, well, I don't know if her wish for finding love was maybe how I perceived it is potentially she had been scorned in a past relationship, and the trauma from that is what kind of catapulted her into this like state of not looking at things rationally and not being in the right headspace. So I think past trauma, unresolved, magnified by cultural variables like growing up with a strict family, double life already normalized. So a lot of pieces were already in place for it to kind of magnify into what it did. And then of course, what's Netflix going to do? They're going to glamorize it. They're going to run with a certain narrative, and they didn't care what it made either party look like.
Which is why it's weird for the Kirit side, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't sorta, I guess, brush over the fact that she did have a lot of pressure for her family. I guess they kind of like went over a little bit, but like they're like, all right, whatever, we're gonna move on to the next thing. Yeah. And if you like look into the actual story or listen to the podcast, they left out so many major points.
Oh, okay.
And they honestly just made it at the end, like you guys said, like a kind of looking for love thing, and like, hey, like I'm still there looking for my person, and that's kind of, they made it more hopeful in the end.
Right.
And in reality, when we went over like kind of how it ended, it still was happening. Like it still got bad.
Right.
And like they kind of, they didn't do it justice.
That?
They kind of just made it kind of like a documentary to make money, to get views, and it wasn't done justice. And I'm kind of surprised because the person themselves that was affected by it, I don't think they've really commented on how their rendition of the doc. Kirit,
no, she's been on some podcasts,
but she hasn't talked about like
really?
how accurate it really was.
We follow requested her. She didn't follow. She didn't let us follow her, but she's been on other podcasts.
Yeah, but I don't know if she really got into like her take on the whole rendition of.
No, I'm not trying to be mean, but when I watch and observe her speaking on those podcasts, I think she's, what people are mad at her about is that she is not taking any accountability on her side.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like, even with my stalker situation, like I shouldn't take accountability. I take almost too much accountability for it in terms of like, not actually like that. I'm the reason she's like, I guess you kind of blame yourself somehow. You're like,
there's some other steps you could have taken.
Yeah. What could I have done to avoid this? Or like, is this girl just actually like really obsessed with me? And you're just like, okay, maybe it's my fault for being, like,
or maybe you're the fifth guy she stalked.
No, I think I was.
Yeah.
But okay, getting back on topic here, because we could go on about that topic for a while.
Yeah.
Speaking of relationships, though, I think when you look at generational trauma, the way I see it in previous quick conversations we've had, and with some of the content I've seen of you create, a lot of it, you do talk about parents relationships with their kids, parents' relationships with their in-law kids or married into the family kids, so their daughter-in-law, especially because the daughter-in-law lives with them usually. Yeah, you talk a lot about all that kind of stuff, and I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on, like, if you were to look at I was gonna ask you what the root cause is of like what do you think it really boils down to, of like a common theme that people are that is causing this trauma between all these families, especially in the Punjabi community. Is that a good way of asking that question, or should I re-ask it?
You mean like core wounds, like what's going on underneath
like,
it all?
So like, I guess like it's mostly like, what's like the glaring things that you've seen in most Punjabi families of like either individuals in Punjabi families or a whole family coming to you and being like, hey, like this is what's happening in our house, and you're like, all right, like, hey, it's always the same thing. It's always the same thing. It's like 2-3 things are always the same factors you always see and always like can like find off like a conversation with them?
I'd say probably like emotional unmet needs. So Punjabi families are really, really great at the topical, superficial, the checklist of food, shelter, water, anything has to do with materialistic things. But then what's missing is the emotional needs, which because we're social beings, just as important to us as food, shelter, water is love, safety, acceptance, belonging. And sometimes those boxes are not checked off. But another reason I started making content is because thus far what you see on social media is a lot of villainizing of Punjabi parents. Lots of just saying this is the problem, but then not showing the other side of it. So usually parents don't have malicious intent when they're falling short, when they're not meeting their kids' emotional needs. There's always a reason behind why they don't have those skills to give. They can't give what they don't have, right? So this is where the cultural history comes into play. This is where a lot of the stuff that has happened in the history of Punjabi people that is the reason why parents haven't developed that side of them. So they're very survival focused. So for them, they just haven't expanded their range in terms of, emotional needs. That's not a part of the dialogue yet. Maybe for our generation going forward, it will be with our kids. I'd like to hope. Hopefully when they're older, they would say so. But I don't think our parents had the luxury of developing those skills. And that's what's missing. And that's usually what brings somebody in terms of childhood trauma.
You mentioned vilifying content, villainizing content. Sorry, can you give me an example of what you're talking about? What you saw? Because I don't know. What
there's a lot of popular accounts that caught like a big wave, maybe during COVID time, where it was a lot of like, this is what your parents did to you. This is why you are the way you are, right?
Gosh.
Have you not seen like there's like a auntie and like her son, and like they're going back and forth, and he's like, you're the reason this is happening to me and everything. You didn't treat me right. That guy blew up too.
It just became this confrontation where it was very oppositional.
Not
and
on
I
my
don't
algo.
think that's going to heal anything.
No
matter what you're looking at, any relationship, you're not going to heal it from an oppositional standpoint. Compassion usually is the route to go. And you can't like hold our parents' generation on the hook for stuff that they just didn't have the know-how. It's not a language they speak.
And I think another thing also is we don't know what their upbringing was like.
They think they're doing brilliant.
So we just think that they were just bad people or they were just trying to give us a hard time, but they're not.
Yeah.
They did the best they could with the tools they had.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it caused trauma on us, but now this generation is, obviously discussions like this.
Yeah.
There's more talk about it. People have more insight into what's going on. And hopefully we don't pass it on to the next generation.
Yeah, and I used to hear from like my grandma, my dad's mom. She used to say, "Oh, you think your dad treats you bad? He used to treat him way worse." So you think that and clearly it's like a whole tree of like strictness that they just had and just got passed down. And like you said, the whole survival thing, I completely agree because you always hear stories about like, son, kadi asi khande bhi nahi si and stuff like that. Like there was times where you just had to fight for whatever you had, and you know what, you put everything else to the side. And biggest thing is it's their first time being parents. Like, they don't have experience. So there's like a lot of parents, you don't have experience. There's no like book you can read to learn.
Yeah. They don't have that breadth of knowledge. They didn't have the luxury of having like life experiences that would have developed that emotional depth within them. Right. So maybe they focused on IQ, but not so much EQ, the emotional intelligence. It wasn't there. And that's not usually by choice. Very seldom do parents have malicious intent for their children.
It's always default.
Well, when you think about back in the day, you mentioned, parents here, food, water, shelter. And yes, that was what they were getting. That's what they were living in India. But not only that, relationships were also arranged. Right. So when you say emotional, how are you going to have an emotion? How are you going to develop any emotional intelligence when the foundation of like a relationship that you are in essentially with your partner was forced on you? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about that as you say this here, I think comes to mind, right?
Yeah. You got to be comfortable in order
generations
to go
of
that deep.
Generations of generations of that.
Yeah. So they're just trying to survive. They're just trying to survive given the circumstances that are in front of them. And they did a pretty decent job. Most of them emigrated here, then started again from nothing. So you're going to be very survival focused. And when you've gone through some of the hardships that has been in the cultural history, the best way to create a sense of safety and security in the world is to become affluent. It's not going to be from being emotionally intelligent. It's not going to be from being health conscious. It's going to come from what do you have in your bank account? And I think that's why a lot of Punjabi families are tunnel vision focused on that being their high value. But then their kids, that's not what's high value for them. What's high value for them is connection and maybe different things, but not so much the materialistic stuff.
So I think if you were to describe a traditional wife and husband from our culture,
Yeah.
the husband is working, trying to, make as much money as possible, but has zero emotional availability for anybody in the household.
Right.
And the woman may have some emotional availability, may also be working, but definitely from the men's side, the guys, the dad side or whatever, I think a lot of girls in our community have had poor dads. And I think a lot of guys have had poor dads.
Right.
And today, I think since you do have 3 guys here with you, I think mental health men's mental health, I think is a huge problem in our community.
Yeah.
And everyone in our community copes in different ways. They either are going to use substances.
Yep.
They're either going to get involved in a life of crime.
Yeah.
They're going to either, and sometimes they use that rage to, do something with them for themselves too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I have personally have rage, and I won't speak on behalf of the other 2 here.
Yeah.
But definitely I can see why my dad has different emotional availability and not that much. And going back to his dad, to probably, my dad's dad parents passed away when he was young, in his teens.
Yeah.
So it was a freak situation. So obviously he had to, figure out life in his own way too. And that's trauma in its own way.
100%.
And so when I look at a lot of our households right now, and that goes, yes, our parents, but also our age group that are building families, starting families today.
Yeah.
They have not yet dealt with this trauma. Majority of the guys, especially.
Yeah.
And that is guaranteed, in my opinion, to result in trauma being passed down to the kid, whether it's 1% or 100% affecting them.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on men's mental health and maybe the stigma around it a little bit in our community, especially? And what have you experienced around that?
Yeah. So I think what you're describing is the mental load for South Asian men or men in general is it's very high. And perhaps that's not because they carry more than females, but because they don't have anywhere to put it down. They don't have anywhere to release it. So naturally, it's just accumulating, and what goes up must come down. So they're going to find other ways to bring it back down, like alcohol or like anger or like overworking themselves, right? That's a big formula for Punjabi dads. But nothing is ever getting tended to. It's all getting repressed. And then a lot of times it's going to come out as a health issue, or it's going to come out in some other way because they're not dealing with the root of the problem. And again, that's not by choice. It's just the landscape isn't there for them. It hasn't been normalized.
So what would you say could be improved? Obviously I know dealing with that's an easy way to put it, but what are some steps you think a lot of men who could be listening to this, or people who know men could be listening to this?
Yeah.
What's kind of some steps they can take to deal with it better?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts in the homes. For example, if you've got a young boy in your home, don't tell them not to cry. Don't do the whole boys don't cry thing, because that's where it starts. If you're perpetuating these generational patterns that are a huge problem and that are contributing to all these issues, then it starts with you. It starts with your conscious decisions with parenting. If it's the person themselves that want to take a look at themselves, well, counseling therapy is a great place to start. If there's a lot of stuff that's been stockpiling up inside, it's a great idea to have a safe space to kind of process all that, release it, understand what's going on underneath it all.
So you spoke a little bit on parenting there. So I know there's always a bit of conflict and dilemma on the stance of rough and kind of tough parenting, opposed to kind of nurturing and understanding type of parenting.
Yeah.
So what are your kind of thoughts on both sides of the argument?
I think every kid's different, and there's the idea of gentle parenting, and then there's the idea of more authoritarian parenting, and so it depends on every child's so unique. They're coming into this world with their own maybe whatever's going on biologically or psychologically, and so the main thing is just attunement, being attuned enough to your child to know what does this child need from me in order to thrive and overcome whatever shortcomings might be going on there. And a lot of times there's just not that attention. Sometimes parents are too busy, or they don't recognize how important the formative years are. So a lot of stuff gets missed until all of a sudden your kid's doing the wrong things. And then they're like, oh my gosh, what happened? But there was lots of telltale signs leading up to that.
I think it's not even just parenting. I think that a lot of parenting, like you said, may happen without the parents, which is a lot of social media, television, and what they see around them as well.
Yeah.
Regarding telling a boy not to cry,
yes.
I think there is a balance there, in my opinion. First of all, I think that if you enable behavior for a boy to cry all the time, which was me when I was growing up, I would cry about anything. So, let's just say I can't watch TV because my dad, we only had one TV in the house. And let's just say I can't watch TV for my favorite show. I'm going to start crying for that, right? If I get hurt, I'm going to cry for that, right? And I distinctively remember, and it's weird, I only remember this when I think back now. I'm like, oh my God, that might have been actually a big moment. But my mom took me aside. I had family coming over, and I think it was TV. I wanted to watch my show. That's the one I remember. And my dad was like, no, whatever, you're not watching TV right now. People are coming over, whatever. And I was just crying. And then obviously my mom knew, I guess, a pattern of my behavior is I'm going to be all like a sad little freaking baby when family comes over, and it's also going to be stupid. It's not good to do that. And I agree with my mom on that. I shouldn't be behaving like that. I think I might have been 7, 8, 9-ish years old. I don't know, something like that.
Okay.
And my mom's, I remember I was like in the corner. I was like crying in the corner, and she comes to me in the corner, and it was like imagine this living room, I'd be in that corner, and she comes and she's like, look, and she did say to me, boys don't cry, whatever. And again, it's totally what she was taught and everything else. My mom was very, very, very strict and rough, not rough on me, but very firm, I guess, with her discipline. Not with maybe a few slaps to the face, but not much, right? Not much. I don't think it was much.
There's a limit. I think 5 is a limit. No more than 5.
So normal.
Right?
No. I mean, I don't know. My dad never hit me once, and I don't think I will ever hit my kid. But I don't know if the mother of my
Pluto,
kids.
do you get beat?
If the mother of my kids one day, slaps my kid, I don't know at this point because I know I'm never gonna do it. I don't have that in me. But back to the point. That's not the point. The point was I was crying, and my mom comes to me and she says, "Raj, boys don't cry." And I remember whatever. I don't know if I realized that night, but I remember after that, I'm like, damn. Most of high school, all of my 20s, I cried maybe under 5 times.
Right.
And there were times where I was almost cried, but then it was weirdly a weird experience.
Right.
And then it wasn't until I turned 30 and I had free time to myself to really reflect and think and be thankful and grateful for a lot of life.
Yeah.
It was when I left the corporate world and was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life right now? It's kind of being reborn a little bit.
Yeah.
And not in the same way as this guy being reborn, though, let me be clear. But definitely.
Everyone glanced at you at that second. Even Pluto.
I think Raj is, you're Christian now, right?
yeah. Born again, yeah. No, so what I was going to say is, I remember. Did you watch the OC growing up? Come on, the OC.
Not much.
Did you watch the OC growing up?
One Tree Hill Man.
All different.
Is that
He's
Orange
like,
County?
how was I watching that?
What's OC?
I don't know.
How
I
was
guess.
Mindy watching?
Yeah,
It's
Mindy
like
was
One Tree Hill type of
Mindy
stuff,
and-
right?
Oh, it's a kids show?
You would have been.
No.
I
It's
just
like those
didn't
like
like it.
It's like-
not reality
What's
TV.
Orange County?
Yeah.
It's like
Stands for-
90210.
90210, like that.
Okay.
It's like that show.
Zoe 101.
You watched it though.
Very
I remember the
minimally.
hills.
Do you remember the episode where Trey?
I'm
One
not
Tree
going
Hill?
to remember
No,
episodes.
the-
Okay, the main
hills.
finale.
Different
Where,
generations. But Jel, yeah,
That's
just go on.
before my time.
Okay,
I've
okay.
never heard this.
He's
Why?
still
I watch
telling
more
his story.
Vanderpump Rules, that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, Vanderpump Rules.
yeah.
Evander Kane?
Great show.
Oh, watch that.
No,
the only
this show's
Evander.
classic.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Don't know what they're talking about. But anyways, the OC, there was a scene in the show where there's something tragic happens at the end of the season,
Yeah.
and there's a song by Emoji and Heap called Hide and Seek. It's the song that Jason Derulo
Great song.
had, where it's like, what you say?
Yeah.
You know that song?
Oh, okay. I actually know the scene you're talking about.
Is that song. I was like, man, that song is such an amazing song. There's no instruments, it's just voices. I was sitting here by myself with my dog, and I remember turning it on, and I was like, what are the lyrics of this freaking song? She says a lot of weird stuff with her voice. I'll read the lyrics, and it's about parents getting a divorce, if you interpret it that way. And there's lines in there like, in the carpet, there's crop circles in the carpet. That's from the furniture moving. and moving out of a house that you used to live in that was filled with love.
Yeah.
And it's talking about images on the walls starting to like disintegrate. And I just started crying by myself, sitting there, just started bawling my eyes out. I have not
Were you
experienced.
high?
Yes.
Okay.
But that doesn't matter. I've been high without like letting those emotions take over. It was more of like how much time I had to myself during that period. And I was like being so thankful that, I am so scared. What if that's a life that this house that I moved into, I'm like, oh my God, what if this whole beautiful thing turns into that? You're asking me, why'd you ask me if I was high?
I think for men, it's a lot easier for them to express their emotions with an external substance. And so you had this big enlightening moment. Would you have had it without the substance, do you think?
I think so. I think I had it the next day because I actually listened to that song driving to a Canucks game in 2022. I'm driving and I started bawling my eyes out again. And I'm like, oh my God, this song's going to make me bawl out every time. Bawl my eyes out every time. So it was
Put
more.
it on, Mindy.
Sorry?
Put the song
Oh
on.
my God. Now I know your kryptonite.
No, I've listened to it since then now.
I'm just
I don't
joking.
want to see him crying.
Yeah.
No, so and like I watched. I had a friend. I haven't had that many people in my life pass away, but when I had one of my friends pass away of cancer, that I knew only for a few years prior to her passing.
Yeah.
She was exactly like Mindy. And actually, fun fact, she was passed away the same hours that he was released out of jail.
Okay.
Really random, and they both are the exact same person and similar to me. So it's like the weirdest story. I bring it up to say I didn't really cry during all these types of events in my life.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm just bringing that up to say that I had some of that trauma where I didn't cry for a long time. Maybe that's
Alright.
trauma. You're probably going to call it that.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a balance. I think that a kid should not be enabled to be crying all the freaking time, girl or guy.
Right.
Especially a guy, though, because
Yeah.
if you live your life always in fear of something, you're not going to grow up to be a strong man. And I think a strong man is important for to be a good parent to future generations.
That's fair. I would say if a kid's crying all the time, why are they crying? So in your case, you were really attached to your TV show.
No, I was
what
that's just one example. I just cried all the time.
Right. So this is what I was talking about in terms of attunement, trying to always look under the behavior. Usually what a kid's giving you, that's just superficial, that's just topical, but there's always something underlying it. And that can be feeling anxious about something, feeling insecure about something, something's not going right at school. It's all just kind of subcontext that they don't know how to communicate. And how is a kid going to communicate through tears? What are tears? It's cortisol leaving your body. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to be crying. And then I'd also maybe like want to challenge that idea of what it means to be a strong man. Technically, how we currently view a strong man is someone who's composed, who's able to kind of have good leadership skills. But really, strength is a little bit of being able to be vulnerable and then put yourself back together again. So being able to unravel and then bring it back in again. But traditionally, we think of strength as the avoidance of vulnerability. And so is that really strength or is that a weakness?
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I absolutely agree with you. When I was, other kids I know as well too, even myself, sometimes as a kid, you do something bad, you get hit, and you're crying because you're not emotional because you got a beating.
Right.
But then you know how your parents sometimes rona nahi.
Yeah.
Chup, chup. Je roya tere hol pen giyan.
Yes.
That kind of stuff. So then you're honke putting after, right?
Yeah.
So it's natural, like you said, cortisol releasing your body.
Yeah.
Obviously, if I'm seeing some kid that's 9 years old have a little tantrum and crying over not being able to watch TV, I'm like, oh my God, I'd be frustrated and annoyed. I'm like, this kid's got some issues, man. Tell him to shut up already, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do believe that being vulnerable is so important. Everyone puts on that brave face.
Yeah.
And everyone always thinks that, hey, listen, this is the picture perfect a poster child of what strength should look like, what success should look like, and everyone's always trying to sort of model that type of stuff. And I think if we don't let ourselves sort of be vulnerable, then
No, if you
you're
don't-
just like fighting a battle yourself. And the thing is, there's so many cases out there of like people who either are famous or not famous that when they try fighting a battle by themselves, whether it's usually like a man, they wind up taking their life or they go down a bad path.
sorry, that's where I
leads
was
to
going.
that.
So on the way here, I was listening to a song.
Emoji and heat.
Yeah, no.
about to say that.
I took a pill in Ibiza, right?
Oh, great
Right.
song.
Yeah.
And because Avicii thought because Avicii thought it was cool.
Yeah.
And so this guy, what's his Mike Posner, Posner, right? Yeah. He wrote the song. Have you heard it?
No. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So every time I listen to it, always hits home because he's like, I took a pill in Ibiza, so he took ecstasy in Ibiza because Avicii thought it was cool. Okay. Now this guy's thinking Avicii's cool and everything else, but he doesn't know about Avicii's struggles, and Avicii commits suicide after from alcohol and everything, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of these people, what it is, they're doing these things just to sort of think that that's how you're supposed to, be in a certain way. Right. People are doing drugs because the other person says it's cool, but if people are able to be vulnerable and everything else, and be able to just be, let out what they want to let out, be it crying or whatever else it is, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying go stand on sit in a podcast, start crying right now, but people need to sort of be safe and letting go of their emotions, right?
Yeah, you have trust in yourself to be able to go there and then bring yourself back. That's what tools and resources are for. Yeah. That's why counseling therapy is a thing, because we don't have those tools and resources, especially for men. It's not a luxury to develop that sensitivity and to know what to do with it. So sometimes you got to go. It's just like any other skill you're trying to attain. You got to go learn. You got to figure out, okay, what do I need to do in order to go be in that space? And then how do I bring it back?
I hear a lot of out there where people are in relationships, friendships, or whatever it is, and they're always like, you know what? He made me do this. I went through this because of him. Okay. People are always looking for someone else to make them happy. Yeah. And then saying, you know what? I'm miserable because of you. It's your fault. This, that. What are your sort of thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I guess now you're talking about relationships, right? This is a huge thing. And I think it's perpetuated by media mostly. Like we have this idea that our other half, our romantic interest, is supposed to make us happy. But usually it's two people looking to the other person, make me happy, make me happy. But then if there's like unmet needs going on, each person's asking for something the other party doesn't have. So it really does start with yourself. It starts from having a full cup on your own, and then whatever you have to give to the other party and vice versa is just the excess. It's the extra on top. But we don't really approach relationships that way. And that's why there's conflict and cheating and all that other stuff comes into play, because the foundation and the main mindset we're going into the relationship with, it's flawed. It's a facade. It's a dream that's given to us from Hollywood, really. Yeah.
I think women believe in that a lot more than men. Would you agree? In our community, especially?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I think we get swept up in the wave of it, and it's exciting to daydream about and think about and kind of want to have one day, especially for Punjabi girls. I think like weddings are so glamorized and oh yeah. It's like the focal point, and it's like in all the conversations in the home.
Makes me sick.
Right? So it's like programming, and there's reasons for that too. But yeah, again, I think this illusion of like my partner, like Mindy was saying, is supposed to make me happy. It's a false premise.
I think when you talk about content and like media, media has changed a lot over the years. Media now is less about Hollywood and more about what's on your phone. It could be anyone, and fair. Someone like you. Hopefully, it's someone like I said on our previous podcast. Hopefully, people get to see your content. Yeah. But I think right now, I think that society and especially in our culture too, but it's in all cultures. Yeah. Actually, I shouldn't say especially in our culture, but I feel like men in general are by media are being told to be vulnerable and all this kind of stuff, which I agree with to a certain extent. Right. And like I said, I don't think it's okay to be crying all day long every day about why me and a victim mindset either, but you have to work on yourself to get
balance. It's always, it doesn't have to be one extreme to the other. That's another thing, our society, we're very black and white. We think in dichotomies. Yes. But there's a nice way to have a balance.
Of course. Yeah. And my point around this is men are being essentially told by the media every day to be more feminine, and women are being told every day by mass media to be more masculine. Would you agree with that or no? Because that's what I think. And
I don't see that so much. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, when I say that, I say that about.
You know what? It depends on algorithms.
No.
So what's your algorithm showing you right now?
It's not the algorithm. I'm talking about just talking to girls and stuff and people in person, right? Many women nowadays are saying that they like it's so hard to find a good guy, right? There are so many guys.
And vice versa.
guys have different intentions in sense of looking for relationships, right? They're probably still trying to, most guys you speak with are trying to figure out their life in terms of career or things like that, or bigger stressors on them than finding someone in general, I would say.
I think we got to narrow it down. What generation are we talking about?
I'm talking about the current generation in that situation right now.
What, like Gen Z?
No, like people like my age, early 30s, late 20s, that are looking to figure out, like, get into their next chapter of their life.
Mm-hmm.
You don't agree with that? I guess what I'm saying.
So what you're saying is there is a narrative being pushed right now for men to be softer and for female to be tougher.
Well, you're preaching that men should be softer, which I don't disagree with, like I said.
Right? I don't see that much out there, but I do see that how there's like this. I'm trying to be careful now.
No, as a woman, you're saying I don't need a man. I don't know any guys that go around saying I don't need a man, right? I listen to podcasts of women in our community as well, and sometimes you hear things about this kind of topic, right?
I don't think that was my message. I think what I'm trying to say is, if you have insecurities, if you have, those unmet needs we were talking about, love, safety, acceptance, belonging, if you're thinking that your partner's going to check off those boxes for you, most likely your partner doesn't have those themselves. So they're not going to be able to check off those boxes for you.
So what would you say do, like, to kind of look within and then go out, is what you're saying?
Yeah, do the work and figure out what are your unmet needs. Which one of those boxes were not checked off in childhood? What are your insecurities? What are your past traumas? What's the stuff that you haven't dealt with? And then you have a nice, strong foundation to go venture out and find your other half, should you wish to do so.
So I think, Raj, what you might have been saying is kind of like how there's these grifters online. I don't know if you're aware of that term or not.
No.
It's essentially people just who sit there in a chair and like tell you, hey, like, I'll teach you how to live a better life. You got to start living this way. Like, for a lot of guys, you know, there's a lot of influencers out there that say like, hey, like, you want to be a man, you got to start treating a woman like this. You got to start acting like a certain way. And on the other side, girl, there's female influencers saying, hey, if you want to be an actual girl, you got to be doing this, and this. I guess that's kind of what he was getting to.
To be clear, when I said guys are absolutely looking for girls, but they're not looking for marriage, is what I'm trying to say. Women are trying to find the one. Guys are trying to find 100 women. That's what I'm trying to say. In general, if you look at the generalized the population.
But now you're talking primitive wiring. So that basically is primitive wiring.
I agree.
We were chatting about this before we started recording, is that men are primed to have multiple partners because the goal
to spread the seed.
Procreate.
Spread the seed.
Yeah, and for females, it's homemaking. Now, of course,
100%.
that's just speaking primitively, and of course, we've evolved past that. But for some people, they're closer to their primitive wiring than others.
So would you say that? So I think men, a lot of the time, that are having mental health things that they're avoiding, and the way that they avoid them is either they get involved in, like I said, bad stuff, or they're substance abuse, or maybe they're just workaholics, like I was saying, and they try and use it for that. That's kind of what I see with men, kind of like doing. With women, what do you think women do to cope? Because you don't really see women that are getting involved in life of crime as often in our community. You don't see women getting involved in substance abuse as often as at the rate of men. I have my thoughts on this, but what do you think women are doing to cope?
Okay, so let's talk about primitive wiring. It's fight, flight, freeze, right?
Yeah.
So for men, maybe if they're going the aggressive route, that's fight mode. That's their primitive survival defense mechanism. For women, we do a lot of flight, we do a lot of freeze. So flight in modern day is escapism. What do we escape into? We escape into child rearing. We become very immersed in our role of motherhood, or maybe career. Okay, your flight mode, you've escaped that direction, or the superficial
trash TV.
It's escapism.
It is escapism.
It's absolutely.
It's like just toxic TV, like reality shows,
or even like social media and stuff, right? Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all that stuff is flight. You're escaping. You're fleeing whatever's uncomfortable inside. A little bit of freeze too, because you're disassociated. Usually you're checked out while you're doing it. So it looks different, but under it all is the same thing. There's something that doesn't feel right. You don't have the formula or the recipe to make it feel right. So you're going to do the best you can with the information you have. And this is what's normalized in modern society.
I see a big problem we have in our community is people are always trying to fix the next person. Thinking like, I'm going to fix them. I'm going to,
as a relationship, in a
relationship.
You mean for females?
Yeah, for females, right?
Well, because we're primed from childhood,
right?
because that's usually the female role, especially
You're not going to
Punjabi
fix them.
household.
Let's make that clear.
Yeah,
to the
that's what I want
audience.
to say.
You're not gonna fix
know
them.
what? You could
No.
try to fix somebody, but if someone doesn't want to put the work on themselves, stuff like that, you need to just accept it. That's it. Because I've seen so many relationships where it's like, oh, I don't know why he's doing this. I don't know why he's doing this. I told him to stop or whatever the case may be. It's like, hey, listen, you know what? It's not up to you for someone to fix themselves. It's up to them.
Fair, but it's wiring. So, okay, there's fight, flight, freeze. Then there's a fourth one, which is called fawn. Are you guys familiar with fawn?
Fawn?
Like FAWN?
Yeah.
Okay.
So fawn is basically people pleasing. So a lot of times, in order to be safe, a Punjabi girl has to be very agreeable and very people pleasing is the formula. That's the name of the game. And what does fawn do? It primes you to think that I'm the solution, I'm the fixer, I don't give up. My job is to make everyone around me happy, then I'll be safe. So again, we're trying to check off those boxes. How are we going to do it? What's our cardinal original relationship? It's the one with our caregivers. So if what we're seeing with our caregivers is mom and dad make me feel safe and accepted and loved and happy when I'm agreeable, when I'm pleasing them, when I'm taking care of them, all right, that's what I go do when I go get married.
Because they've never had unconditional love. It was always, based upon the conditions of
Conditions.
If to a girl, especially, if you're a good girl, you're not dating nobody, you go to school, you're getting good grades, we love you. Or you got a boyfriend, so now they think, oh my God, I don't want to do that. So now they're people pleasers for the rest of their lives, right?
Relationships become transactional. And for females, they learn early on that it's not a two-way street. It's a lot of emitting. It's a lot of giving. And what they're giving is kind of caretaking and tolerance. And that's what it sounds like you're describing there.
It's like you're saying Gabor Mate, what he talks about children.
Right.
They need that unconditional love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Acceptance.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. So that totally, when a kid grows up with that, where a kid even messes up and even, you feel like in our culture, where we would have done something today, if what's going on in our community now, there would have been a lot more. If this happened 30 years ago, how many honor killings there would have been? Because what's going on now. But obviously, things have changed and everything. But now you look at your kids and that stuff that they're doing, anything happens now, you still accept them. And you're like, hey, listen, you know what? It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to mess up. And even though you screwed up or whatever, or you made some choices that we don't agree with, we still love you no matter what. So
I don't know. Do you think we're both parents, right? You have kids?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think we're fully there yet? Because I'd say we're not.
I think I am, right? in the sense, because I've seen so many generations where it's always been that conditional love.
You know what? I always say this, and I'm a mental health practitioner.
Yeah.
Come 15, 20 years, my kids are going to have a laundry list. Tuani kita, tuani kita, tuani kita.
Yeah.
It's all subjective, right? So just like our parents thought that they aced it because they did better than what they experienced with their parents, we think we're crushing it, but I'm sure we have blind spots because usually we parent based on our inner child wounds. So we're parenting through our lens. Seldom are we parenting through the child's lens, which is what I was talking about is necessary to do.
But what if you recognize your inner child wounds and are aware of them?
Have you gone to therapy?
I've gone to therapy many times.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why do you say that?
He talked about some stuff in some of your other podcasts where he talks about how do people get involved into gang violence? What are they seeking? They're seeking validation, the dopamine, the adrenaline, the acceptance, the belonging, right? You don't get it in the home. You're going to go try to find it somewhere else. Again, that's our primitive wiring. And that sounded like counseling therapy.
Actually, that part of it never.
He's like, no, that's not me.
No, that's just experience. Just I'm older now. A lot of life experience.
Yeah.
And I've read a lot of books.
Cool.
And listened to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
And you just take a little bit from everything and you just sort of put pieces together that make sense to you.
He's like, I'm crushing it. See?
Right?
No. Yes. So you can always tell that's EQ, right? So you had
Mindy has high EQ for sure.
Yeah.
You had the environment to develop it, and so you developed it.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not available to our parents' generation.
And even in relationships. So I was listening to this book. It's not finished yet. It's 3/4 done. It's called the ADHD effect on marriage.
All right.
And it opened up my eyes so much because you know what? Every relationship isn't the same, but when you have ADHD in a mix, it's a way different relationship.
Right.
So just some things I take away from there as well too. But every relationship you look at, like sometimes with emotional intelligence, I am better with dealing at situations.
Right.
Whereas because I have awareness of a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I could definitely do better in a lot of situations. But whereas before, the relationships that have been so toxic because of not having that awareness and everything. But still, like, you know, there's many challenges. Relationships are always challenging. We like to watch a movie and think like everyone lives happily ever after, but it's never like that.
No, absolutely
right?
not.
So what are your suggestions on, like, I'm sure there's a lot of people, you know, that are going through situations in marriage and any sort of, you know, dating as well too, that are dealing with issues. What kind of support or what kind of advice can you give them, or even some books to read? Because you know what, in our culture especially, everyone's got huge egos. Nobody wants to pick up a book. They're like, "Sanu sara kuch pata, tenu ki pata."
Associations. Yeah. And I think, you know, in today's day and age, you can go into ChatGPT, you can plug in a book name, say, give me a summary. And if you don't want to read a book cover to cover, at least start there. I always say planting seeds. Something's better than nothing. So if you have someone in your life where you're like, man, I want them to develop that EQ, let's get it going. Just snippets, just give them little seeds, little tiny pieces, and it'll get the ball rolling. In terms of resources, there's these 2 books I really, really like. Reconciliation. I'm not even going to try to say his name. It's written by a Buddhist monk. I don't want to say it incorrectly.
Yeah. We'll put it in
Reconciliation. Audiobook is the way to go because he's got guided meditations in there, and it's all about healing the inner child, not only your inner child, but your dad's inner child. So it's really, really great. I always recommend that to most of my clients. And then Rick Hansen, not the Abbotsford Rick Hansen, there's a different Rick Hansen, Resilient. That's a really great book as well. So there's so many. Anything Gabor Mate is brilliant with a lot of what he says, most of what he says. And then have you guys ever touched upon in your podcast intergenerational trauma? Have you guys talked about that?
Not deeply.
I think we've like brushed over it.
Okay, so there's a book. It's very dry, but it's got some like really cool examples in there. It's called "It Didn't Start by You" by Mark Wolin. And that is so eye-opening when you start to see, like, this is in our cells. Like, some of the stuff, we might not even know why we are the way we are, and it's coming from up the way. It's in our lineage. It might be like our Baba's Baba, right? And it's very relevant. It's very relevant. Anytime you've had a culture where there's been certain things that have gone on, it's so important to look backwards. We can't only look forwards. So the intergenerational piece is so big, and that's a good book for that.
So, this might be backtracking a bit, but I mean, this could also be related to what you just spoke about right now. You brought up people pleasing, right? And that's something in the Punjabi community that's massive. Like, I feel like everyone does it. Everyone has someone in their family that does it.
Yeah.
What would you say is kind of like some of the root causes that leads people to kind of becoming that, or just doing it without even like knowing?
Seeking safety. So we're all adaptive. We're all gonna try to create a formula to create safety for ourselves. So how are you going to create that safety? Are you going to be the alpha? Are you going to be the dominance, the force, the power? Is that how you're going to create your safety? Or are you going to be the one who's subservient, subordinate, agreeable, making everyone around you happy? And is that how you're going to create your safety? So when there's so much stuff going on in the homes, because maybe there's marital conflict in Punjabi homes, maybe there's financial stress, maybe there's substance abuse going on. Okay, the child needs to create safety somehow, because all those things are very dysregulating for a child's nervous system, for anyone's nervous system. So they're going to try to reestablish regulation somehow. So they're going to try to do, all right, let's go the people pleasing route then. If it's not your natural innate to go the fight route, aggression, and make the safety happen, then you're gonna do it in a more passive way.
And how would you say, like, for someone in that mind state that doesn't realize, like, what would you say, like, how would you help fix that, or try like treating that in a sense, I guess you can say?
Okay. Yeah, so I use a modality called somatic therapy. Are you guys familiar with somatic therapy?
I think I saw a video of it.
Okay.
You talking about
well,
it.
what do you know about it?
I just recognize the word. Maybe when you start going, I'll know. I do remember you talking about it.
So it's the idea that there's a mind and body connection. So safety is a visceral feeling, right? You know when you feel safe.
Yeah,
You know when you don't feel safe. You feel it in your gut. So in order to kind of heal whatever's gone on, you got to go, well, you don't got to, but I like to say, especially for Punjabi people, because the dialogue around physical is a lot easier than psychological. So you got to go through the body, bottom up processing. You go, all right, when you're talking about that, what does it make you feel physically? Where do you feel it? Is there a knot in your stomach? Is there heaviness in your chest? You just took a deep breath. So
no, I feel it for sure.
Yeah.
You're making me uncomfortable. No, I'm joking. I'm gonna start crying. That's joking.
Put the song on again. Yeah. So it's physical is a side of the story that we neglect so much. We're nervous. We're shaky. That's a primitive response. Our body's trying to tremble out the fear. What do animals do? If your dog was being chased right now, he's gonna tremble afterwards because he needs to dispel the trauma.
No, not my dog, but yeah, maybe other.
Your dog's the alpha. He's attacking. No, but yeah, so physical stuff, it's really relevant. And that's what somatic therapy is. It's a lot of using what your body's trying to tell you and using that to regulate the nervous system, using that to calm down an overstimulated brain and body.
I was gonna say, I feel like you definitely are giving the Coles notes of that. I feel like there's so much more you could say about that.
We can do a mini therapy session right now.
No. But
let's do that.
We could. Like, I had a couple questions on that.
Okay, well,
very concise.
No. Before you go there, you mentioned watching some of the other episodes where I talked about the stalker, how I was behaving with my body too, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then even right now, you caught me feeling it because when you talk about it. And you talk about that feeling in your stomach, like I can feel it. I know when I have it.
Brings your awareness to it.
Yeah, it brings my awareness to it. And right now I'm like exhaling it. But anyways, it's all fun and fine and dandy to talk about all this stuff. But realistically, I'd say over 50% of the audience that's going to listen to this is not going to do shit. I'm just going to say it. And the reason why is because most people are going to either be like, oh my God, this is so soft. This is so, they're avoiding it. I think that the truth is the book recommendations are really, really good. But realistically, like, if you don't have any care in, and I'm saying this because I know up until this point, if someone has listened, but they aren't going to change anything, the reality is your life is never going to get any better. And anything that bothers you, that's your insecurity, is going to continue to bother you forever and ever. It's never going to be forgotten, and you need to act, and you need to do something. And what I did when I was going through my, I was in a long relationship from high school till I was like 22, 23. After that, I was, single for a long time. Right. And in that period of time, I was like, oh my God, why am I so upset? Okay, you know what? It's because I'm not going to the gym enough. Start going to the gym, that will help. Then it's like, okay, I think I'm too fat, or I'm not strong enough, whatever. It's my body image. So I'll focus on eating better. I'll focus on the gym more. Then I'll be like, oh my God, I'm not number one at work. I need to be number one at work. That's why I'm anxious right now, because I'm number two. Or like my boss, I always thought I was going to get fired. Like every day, I was always like, I'm going to get fired if I'm not number one, which made sure that my results were always extremely high, because I was obsessed with being, involved in that. It got to a point where I won all the awards you could win, whatever. And I was like, oh my God, I just reached all these goals. Like I had a goal when I was working in the corporate world to be, you can get those trips to somewhere if you win, top performers, whatever. Okay, yeah. So, when you're
recognition.
Recognition. I was like, oh my God, yes. And I had this dream. That would be my dream. I'd I'd be like, I can't wait to accept that award and go to this trip. And I got to do it. And I was like, well, what now? Okay, great, right? And then fast forward, then I was like, okay, it's my job that's I can't stay here. I changed my job to my dream job, working at Tesla and managing teams there. I was like, oh my God, I got my dream job. Still wasn't happy. Then I was like, oh my God, what? So I went through this journey for a long time. I almost signed up for real therapy, but I ended up doing my own self-help situation. On top of that, I actually in recent years even have used ChatGPT. Okay. Where I say, this is my situation. Why am I feeling this way? Yeah. My curiosity is what naturally kind of drives me to look inward, because I'll be like, today is a good day. It's sunny outside. Yeah. My client's happy with the work. Yeah. We just released a podcast, but I'll be feeling like shit. And I'm obviously exhaling it out right now.
With curiosity.
So then I'm like, okay, why is this? And then ADHD, you forget what the hell you were upset about earlier. Too sometimes you're just ping ponging around, and you'll be like, oh yeah, shoot, you know what? I ignored my mom's call, and I got kind of annoyed when she kept calling me, and then I feel bad now because I did that, for example. And I'm like, oh shoot, I kind of you think about these things. Yeah. I am naturally curious like that, and I've been on this mission, and getting to where I am today, my goodness, yes, I would never be able to sit here on this podcast, have these type of conversations if I didn't take the time to look inward and figure out what the hell is making me upset. And guess what? Yes. Nothing external is ever going to make you happy. Nothing internal is going to sustainably keep you happy.
Right.
forever. Like you're going to have ups and downs.
Yeah, it's not about trying to delete, erase, or eliminate the negativity. It's about building your tolerance and coping skills. And it sounds like what you're describing is mindfulness, a big buzzword, right? It gets talked about a lot, but it's that key piece of being able to be the awareness behind your thoughts and feelings rather than being in them. And that's curiosity. And so if you're naturally, innately a curious person, then you're just naturally mindful. Why are you holding your breath right now?
Oh no, that's just to make sure that I don't forget what I'm going to say. It's not like that.
Okay, I remember where we left off.
Go ahead.
We talked about a mini therapy session.
Sure. You want to do it?
Okay. Well, why do you look so scared? Okay, may I ask, why did you avoid going to therapy?
I almost signed up.
Why didn't you follow through on it?
I was uncomfortable about it for sure. I felt uncomfortable.
Like the stigma? Did you
No,
feel...
I didn't care if anyone knew that I was in there. It's just like I just felt like it's a little cringed out by it, I guess, a little bit, not gonna lie. And at the time it was COVID, it was 2021.
Right.
Work was going relatively well, but not so well because Tesla was really stressful, and it was a very tough boss to deal with. So it was giving me extreme anxiety at the time.
All right.
And having to handle all that at once, is a lot going on.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the social, lack of social thing was affecting me to the point where, and my friend had passed away, all the stuff I had going on in that 2 years. So I was like, what the hell's going on with my life?
Yes.
I didn't do it because, I was ADHD, so probably got distracted from actually signing up. And then within that week time, I ended up doing my self-help therapy, which resulted in extreme, profound moments.
So you were asking what would you do for someone if they're people pleasing, or how would you help someone? And then I was discussing somatic therapy. I was explaining, okay, in a gist, in a nutshell, this is what somatic therapy is. And just to give you guys a little real snippet of what it is, we can do like a little mini session.
Go ahead.
Which one of you want to? I feel like I'm a magician
I think
asking for a contestant.
Why is everyone looking at me first?
No. I'm just looking over to see if you want to do it. I feel comfortable doing it. I have no problem.
It's not actual therapy.
I know.
It's just to get so people watching can get an idea of what is this thing. What is
Sure.
Great
like,
idea.
A lot of time Punjabi people will say like
Okay, sure.
"Ki ho jana."
Yeah.
Okay, sure,
What
so
is
go ahead.
talking about it gonna do?
Go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead. You can do it with me.
Who you?
Yeah.
Okay. Try to think of like the last thing that stressed you out or made you uncomfortable in some way. You don't even have to share it. Just think about it.
Uncomfortable.
Stressed, any unpleasant emotion. It doesn't even have to be
It's
big or
self-inflicted. It was
small.
self-inflicted.
All right, just grab it in your head, think about it, revisit that moment.
Okay.
Now do that body scan from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, and you're just trying to find sensations. Maybe like heaviness in your chest, not in your stomach. See what you notice.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say chest, stomach? Okay, and then just place your hand where you feel it. Yeah, connect with it, acknowledge it. If you had to associate an emotion with that area in your stomach, what emotion would you say is hanging out there? Because usually emotions will manifest somewhere in the body. So what emotion do you think it is?
Like not a good feeling, I guess. It's like when you feel kind of a bad feeling in the pit of your stomach type of feeling.
Nervous, dread,
Guilt?
fear?
Maybe guilt.
All right.
Yeah.
Now get into a reflective headspace.
Guilt and dread, maybe both. Yeah, I don't know.
Try to think early years, formative years. Try to think what was one of your earliest or earlier memories of feeling that same feeling, guilt and dread. You don't have to share it.
No, I mean, earliest memories would be stories that my mom have told me over the years. Does it have to be a core memory that I actually remember being present in?
Yeah, like what popped into your head?
Well, I just think about like when I would do something wrong and then I was trying to hide it from my mom that I did something wrong, right?
All right.
Like, and you just feel guilty, I guess, or you feel guilty like you really screwed up, you did something, and then you're like, you just feel like shame, and then you feel like, why did I do that? And your parents are obviously pissed at you, for example.
So now we're talking shame.
Sure, yeah, okay.
What do you feel when you talk about that?
What do you mean?
Like
Laughter is a coping mechanism.
Yeah. So is it uncomfortable? Do you want to get away from this subject right now?
No.
Do you feel like shame comes up a lot for you in different
It's
instances?
it's self-inflicted shame, right? So when you do something stupid, it's for example, when I say something stupid, it's even like lack of action. So ADHD can sometimes prevent me from actually getting things done.
Right.
So I'll be like, oh my God, I have so much to do. And like, that's what I'm releasing right now. It's like, I have so many things to do. And the thing is, I'm like that hamster on a wheel where I'm always going. And I feel like you can relate, but we're just going. And then you're like, oh, I got to jump on that hamster wheel. And I got to jump on that hamster wheel. And I got to jump on that. So I guess from a young age, it's not like I had like, oh my God, I have all these things to do. It's hard. I guess I haven't thought about this. So I'd have to think deeper about it. But like getting scolded by your parents or getting scolded for no reason from your parents can result in shame maybe too. I guess maybe that's part of why I'm used to that emotion.
So typically, we do a lot more here. We'd work with the shame.
No, keep going. I'm joking.
We'd work with this shame.
Keep going.
But here's the takeaway here.
Yeah.
Sometimes we overcomplicate. What is this therapy thing? How are you going to heal me? What's trauma healing? The two biggest human emotions, guilt and shame. So usually we can dial and crank it back, and we can bring it back to a moment where we felt shamed as a child or guilty as a child. And usually the two questions we'll ask to kind of see what was the landscape growing up, what kind of parenting style did you have, is we'll ask two questions. How did your parents respond when you made a mistake? How did your parents respond when you got hurt? And that's kind of the starting point for exploring going forward with, is this a pattern in your life? Does it inform the way you connect with others? Does it inform the way you show up professionally? Is that shame taking up more space than you realize?
Yeah, in the limited bit of therapy that I've also had not with a registered psychotherapist, I guess you could say, but just like learning about different ways to handle stuff. I have I would say I can get angry very fast. Like I definitely
irritability.
Can be irritated pretty fast. I'm not a violent person, but I can get irritated also really fast. And also sometimes if I'm get annoyed with my mom or my sister or my partner, it can result in me being like, fuck, why was I such an asshole there for no fucking reason?
Also regret and you feel embarrassed.
Yeah. And then like apologizing, it never really helps. Obviously you've already done the damage. So you just feel like an idiot. And then you're like, but what I've learned over the years is like breath work.
Cool.
Do you know the Wim Hof method?
No.
Yeah, Wim Hof, he does, you can get to a state of enlightenment, which is also something part of my self-help therapy that I did, which is a breathing exercise. You're kind of breathing like fast, rapidly, and you're holding your breath for a certain period of time, then you're breathing really, really fast, and you hold your breath for a certain period of time. And obviously, you probably don't want to comment on that because it's not maybe scientific, but there's plenty of people that have had profound benefits from it. And I definitely had some of those moments as well. And meditation I've tried, but it's difficult with ADHD, especially. I think it's just extra difficult.
Right.
But breath work has been something like I just release it and it's just like, just breathe. If I'm pissed off, pissed off. I'll go for a walk and I'll just breathe like 10 times. And I don't do it enough. And obviously I've led teams. I think I've been a great leader in so many ways, but I've also been a horrible leader. And I consider myself also parenting my team, right? You're not parenting them in the traditional sense, but you are obviously making sure that they're getting a report of how they're doing. And you're giving them that feedback and there's that two-way feedback street. Are you doing good for them? Just like being a parent.
So due to your professional role you play and other things in your life, you've done some work, right? And through that work, you've found strategies that have worked for you. Now, do you know the science of why breath work works?
I think that there is I think that it definitely feels like you do release something when you do exhale. And I think inhale, exhale, like you can like mentally have that. I'm assuming that it obviously has when you breathe in a bunch of oxygen and release it, I'm sure that it helps helps your heart rate maybe calm down, but go ahead.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about the example, the road we were going down. So let's say you have an instant where you feel that little twinge of shame and you've now brought your awareness to it. Why it's important to breathe into that space and physically actually take your hands to the space you're feeling it is because it regulates this one nerve in our body. And maybe you guys are familiar with it, the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve, VAGUS, is responsible for turning on or off that fight, flight, freeze switch. It's deeming, are you safe right now? Or is there a perceived danger or threat? Now, because our vagus nerve doesn't know, is there a wild animal charging at me? Or am I just dreading a presentation? Or am I just dreading meeting up with someone I have conflict with, right? It doesn't know the difference. The only way it knows if you're safe or not is based on how you're breathing. So what do we do when we're a little bit upset? We go... or we'll breathe very quickly and rapidly. So in order to counter that and just tell the vagus nerve, hey, simmer down, we don't need to go into fight, flight, freeze. Like, I'm just taking an exam here. That's where the science of breath work comes in. Because when you do one of these, it lets your nervous system know that you're safe. It's A-okay. You can come more into the adaptive, evolved part of the brain, which is your decision-making, impulse control, rational thought center. Sometimes we get blocked from that, especially when we have emotional triggers. So that's a little bit, loosely explaining what somatic therapy does for you is it helps you get to the stuff that's pushed way the heck down. And you wouldn't really, in traditional talk therapy alone, you wouldn't be able to access it as easily. But because you're going through the physical route, it helps you kind of navigate all of that.
What would you say to someone that is extremely afraid of what's buried underneath, which I think is the majority of people?
I think that's why I love my modality. You don't even have to talk about your trauma in order to tend to it. It's all about the physical. Trauma is not what's happened to you. It's what your body's doing to you as a result
100%.
of it. Right? So even the word trauma, it comes from the Greek word wound. So sometimes we got these wounds and sometimes we don't want to look at the wound. It's too scary. So we just throw a bandage on it, right? We ignore it, we don't give it air, So the term, what you're describing is called a cherished wound. Ever so often we have a cherished wound where we don't want to give it air because it's too scary to do that. And that's where a modality like somatic therapy really comes in handy because you don't actually have to get into the nitty gritty in order to tend to all that stuff. You get to focus on the physical, use a little bit of a side route to get there. And then if you feel safe enough, maybe you'll share, maybe you'll talk about it.
On the topic of men's mental health and also coping with all that kind of stuff, obviously substances you mentioned earlier is one way that men often can get more in tune. I am sure all of us have witnessed men, guys we've been around, whether it's our age group or our elders, getting really drunk and then sometimes having emotions and crying or having that kind of stuff, right? I think we've all seen it.
Yes.
So there's obviously, there's some people I know that won't really have a really in-depth conversation unless alcohol is involved,
right?
Which means sometimes I have to drink alcohol to be there for these people a little bit. And I don't mind. I obviously drink. It's not like I'm afraid of it. The point is, why do you think alcoholism is such a, coping mechanism, and why do you think it's so accepted? Why is it okay for even a mother of a traditional mother? My mom was not okay with me drinking, for the record, but most mothers will then forgive it. But if it's anything else, it's total. It's like 0. Alcohol is fine, and then anything else is like 100 out of 100 for extremity. So can you give us your thoughts?
You mean like specifically in the culture? Why is it like used so much as a coping mechanism? Is that the reason for why we have it so prevalent? What is alcohol? It's a suppressant. It's a numbing agent. It helps push a lot of stuff down or shelf it, right? So it makes the uncomfortable suddenly a little bit more comfortable because it gives the people the courage and the wherewithal to be able to go there. They're using it as a dwai a lot of times. They're using it as a medicine, but medicines also have side effects sometimes, and this medicine, so to speak, has a lot of side effects because you're never actually getting to the root. Sure, maybe you'll shed some tears, maybe you'll talk a little more liberally, maybe you'll be a little bit more vulnerable, but you're not actually getting to the root. You're not getting to the guilt. You're not getting to the shame. Alcohol won't do that. It'll add to the guilt and shame.
100%.
Yeah.
It's really sad. I think people my age too, it's very, very prevalent to want to go out and want to just to find ways to cope. And I think that a lot of Indian families care about what was it that you said earlier? Pleasing, but they also very much care about how they look in front of other. Like
perceived
it's a huge
image.
Perceived image is a huge. I think that's the hugest insecurity, and that's one thing that my upbringing I'm very fortunate for. That my parents were the opposite of
they didn't care.
They never once. I mean, obviously there was still a certain extent. Say, Rod, you're going to embarrass us in front of the family if you're being an idiot. There's a little bit of that, but it wasn't like, if somebody sees you like this, or what is everyone going to think? Whatever. It was more like I think. It was more like that big line. Yeah. My mom would be like, I'm freaking saying this about you, and I'm gonna freaking kick you out of the house. Like there was no trying to blame other
the
people.
The command center was inside.
Local.
Fair.
So I didn't deal with that, but I look around.
Yeah.
I go to these Indian weddings, and I go more and more, and I go, oh my goodness, this is just a show off. That's why I was shaking my head earlier talking about Indian weddings.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So here's a theory about this. So primitively, or let's just say even one generation up, what are we? We're farmers. So survival is hinged upon network and connections. So this is why we place high value on how we're perceived, our stature, our network. So our parents are literally villagers, right? How is a villager going to survive if they're in need of a resource? If they're down and out, they need support, they need some medicine, or they need food or something. It's your fellow person. If your fellow person doesn't like you, or they think you're shameful to be associated with, you're in trouble. So again, it's our survival instincts. This is why it's high value to care so much about the collective, so much about how are we being perceived, because there's a formula in the brain that's embedded that being well liked increases my chances of making it. I think it has a lot to do with that. Village mentality, primitive wiring, agricultural roots, it all plays a role.
And this is one thing I'm very thankful for my parents too. I'm not trying to say they were perfect parents, but it was values that were ingrained in me when I look back. It was about doing the right thing rather than how you look.
Fair,
and don't you, but what's annoying to me is it's not like that. The primitive thing is, it's one thing if you're trying to be liked by other people and people pleasing,
right?
But it's another thing to be like, oh, they got a Range Rover, now we got to get a Range Rover.
So
they got a bigger house, now we got to get a bigger house. My parents were the opposite of that, but like, where does that, is that just about likability then? Or it's just like, oh, I'm respected more?
That which we feed will grow stronger. So because that's the original formula, it got the ball rolling, snowball effect, right? What makes you feel good is how you're being perceived, how well liked you are, how accepted you are. Then it's really easy to build off of that domino effect and go into the next territory of, well, now we're one-upping each other. We're not even trying to be liked, we're trying to be the most liked. So
everybody wants to be a sarpanch.
Yes.
Right?
Me and my husband use that term a lot.
But when I worked at Tesla, I was one of the first Punjabi people to join in this area, and in Lower Mainland. And I remember going, this is the perfect car for Punjabi people. We just need to get, and so I hired some like I couldn't be the only Punjabi speaker. So when we finally had some Punjabi speakers, I was like, oh my God, just wait. Once one person has it on the block, everyone's going to get it. Look at freaking Surrey right now. Everybody's got a Tesla. And it's just an example of like also not just trying to one up each other, but also trying to maybe be belonging and also trust. It's also a trust thing. It's like I trust them because they bought this vehicle or they did this too. Yeah. And I think that my dad does a lot of that. My dad will outsource all decision making when it comes to like a big purchase. It's like, okay, the family did this way. They worked out.
It's a safe choice So that's another thing is risk adverse.
Yeah.
And safety's in numbers. So that's why there's a lot of following, because it feels like the safer route. And we're not really wired to want to go against the grain. And being that way is a luxury. That means you have a little bit of a safety net that now you feel safe enough to go about things in a different way. So again, we can look at everything with compassion. Our parents weren't just fixated tunnel vision on the accolades and the achievements and higher education and material things just for fun. It's because they thought that's what's going to keep you safe.
Mm-hmm. And that's where a lot of the problems come today, though. We are safe. We are so safe. So we are just trying to find.
That's why we have the luxury of thinking from a broader lens.
Yeah.
That's why we can see what. Yeah, go on.
So obviously my generation, we're not too sensitive. So like, we've been through a lot growing up with, parents are a lot rougher around the edges back then compared to how parenting is now.
Yes.
I might be wrong. You have more experience in what's going on in people's houses, but kids don't get beatings like they did back in our generations, right?
Yeah.
They might get yelled at still, but I feel like the kids now are way more sensitive, and I don't think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Can you explain what you mean by sensitive?
Like everyone's easily offended.
So they don't have a thick skin.
Yeah.
And it's enabled.
Is that a bad thing?
It's
strength.
Bad thing.
It's about having some strength.
No, it's a bad thing.
But here's where we're challenging what does strength mean.
Challenge 100%. So it's a bad thing if a kid ends up going into the fetal position over it, breaking down.
And here's where tools and it comes back to the dialogue of tools and resources. It's never about trying to eliminate hardship. That's just not feasible. Bad stuff's going to happen to you. You're not going to get the job you want. Your partner might break up with you. You might get into an accident. You might break your arm. Bad stuff's unavoidable. But it's about building our grit, resilience, perseverance. How do you do that? Tools and resources. And what I mean by tools and resources, you've found your own bag of tools. It works for you. Great. That helps you stay within your window of tolerance. So then perhaps you don't go out of range that often, fight, flight, freeze wise. Everybody is supposed to have a bag of tools. Otherwise, we're going to constantly be more in our survival mode rather than our rational part of our brain. So I guess what was your original question?
Thick skin, kids.
You're
are
saying
sensitive.
kids are too sensitive, but
Yeah.
then we're not giving them tools and resources. Then that's gentle parenting. So that's another end of the extreme.
Like, gentle parenting, like, you see a lot of kids now whose parents have done everything for them. Basically, tied their shoelaces from.
They're
especially
overcompensating.
boys,
Overcompensating
especially boys in our
everything,
community.
Done.
trying to call
Everything's
me
done
out?
for them, right? They never taught them no independence, nothing at all. And
Coddling, helicopter
yeah.
parenting.
Yeah.
Well,
Helicopter parenting.
yeah. So I think maybe we briefly touched upon this, but when you become a parent, your inner child wounds come out to play. So if you're coddling, if you're a helicopter, that means you're overcompensating because you haven't tended to your original root wounds. You're trying to parent through the lens of your wounds.
I think that's a really profound thing that you're saying that isn't as clear even for someone listening to this for the first
Right,
time.
it's a
We are
little
oftentimes
elusive,
we call people, oh, this person thinks they're the center of the universe, or main character syndrome, right? And obviously that does exist. But we also have the subtle main character syndrome. Oh, I get angry when this happens. You must get angry when that happens. You must get angry when that happens. When I think about leadership, when you're leading a team, you're often thinking, okay, the way that I'd be motivated is this way, so I'm going to motivate my team this way. Well, no. You have to make sure your team's motivated to do great work, but to make sure that 20 people are motivated, one of them might want to be like, recognition, for example. I loved recognition to be at the top of the, the top of the stage for accepting a reward.
Yeah.
One of my strongest assistant managers I ever had, who's still a good friend of mine to this day, was we had a mutual understanding. He doesn't want public recognition at all,
Yeah,
and he's like, that
everybody's
actually
different.
demotivates me.
Yes.
Right? You think that everyone gets motivated by being put up on a stage and saying, hey, you're the best person ever?
Yes.
That could have the complete opposite effect. So I think that if someone is listening to this right now, when they're talking about their kids, when they're talking about their partner, when they're talking about their employees, if they have them, you have to take those glasses off for a second and try and put on the glasses of the person that's looking back at you. And I think that's like, I just want to make that really clear, is that's what you're trying to say here, is like, you may do what your tendencies are, but guess what? That person, and like, nobody else is you. So they're guaranteed to have something different, even if there are some similarities.
Yeah, and when you're parenting, it's really easy to let your ego take control and be in the driver's seat, because sometimes people can think of their child as an extension of them, but that's not the case. This is a whole human life with its own. So what you're describing there is values. Some people are going to value wealth, success, fame. Other people are going to value freedom, fun, creativity, friendship. Everybody's values are different. So it's important to let your kid have their own values.
Yes.
And I don't think that's happened a lot traditionally in Punjabi culture. I think it's been like, this is what I value. This is what you need to value. That's why there's a strong push on like getting married by a certain age and higher education and having certain prestigious careers and things like that, professional titles. It's because that's their value system. That comes from what makes them feel safe. But kids, because like you said, we feel safe now, so our values are going to be different.
Of course.
Yeah.
Like, going back on what you kind of said with the whole helicoptering parent and like, you will treat your kid the way that you want it to be treated type of ordeal. Like, kind of like how you will like, oh, I'm going to make sure they don't have to feel the same pain that I feel and stuff like that. So you do
I
that.
think that's in the equation for sure.
And it's crazy because growing up and like watching like movies or TV shows and just talking to people, that's actually the one thing everyone says, which I guess could lead to what you said, where it's like, you don't do that whole like attunement was the term. Yeah. You don't do that, but instead you just like, oh no, I'm just gonna focus on like, oh, like my parents are so strict, I'm not gonna be as strict and all that, and you forget about everything else.
It's really easy to do that. It's really easy to do that. Yeah.
I think like, why would you say everyone gets into that trap? Is it kind of like what they see and what they like wanna like?
Until you've healed your stuff's going to keep showing its face to you in one way or another. It's going to show up in your marriage. It's going to show up in your relationship with your child. And that's what I meant by come one day in 10, 15, 20 years, my kids might have a completely different perspective of their upbringing. I try to be as cognizant of it as possible.
But, I know you do.
But of course, no one's perfect, right? Yeah. So I humanize myself as well. And I think that's a funny thing that I sometimes get from the community is like, I don't feel like I get a lot of wiggle room. It's like, oh, you're a mental health practitioner though. So how can you have that? Yeah. Or how can that be going on in your home? But that's like saying doctors don't get sick. Or nurses don't get sick, right? Yeah. So we're all human. We all just do the best we can with the information.
We're all learning.
We have, right? So, but yeah, when you know better, you do better. And that's what life is all about. It's about evolving, learning, being humble enough to learn what's going on over here.
Yeah, no, nothing. No, so what? To Mindy's point about the softness. Okay, I think another thing that I haven't acknowledged yet on the podcast, or maybe even with these guys, or really with a lot of people, I guess, is my dad definitely did not give me validation growing up.
Okay.
So there was a lot of you're never going to be able to do that. Yeah, right. Which obviously I think comes from higher up. Okay, and my dad would be like when I said I was going to move out and I'm going to get my own place. My dad's like, yeah, right. And I was like, okay, I wasn't upset about it. No, he's just like, yeah, right. Not even de kunge. He's like, yeah, right. But then obviously later on, it'd be like, oh, now you're going to get it. Now you're going to see how hard it is. You're going to come running back. And you know what I mean? Like, it's no matter what.
That's his inner child, right?
No. And what I'm saying is, there was a certain point where he stopped doing that because he realized that like I actually kind of know what I'm doing and I haven't asked for his support much, right? And I've achieved some of the things I've been kept continuously saying.
Yeah.
I sit here today with that being trauma, but I'm thankful for that trauma. In the same way, when I go into Lululemon, I was
hold space for it.
When I was, well, I don't know. What do you mean hold space for it? Like like, what do you mean?
Like,
I didn't think you were gonna be happy about that. So
like
you caught me off guard.
Like you're not personalizing it. No, you're not antagonizing him for it. You're not sitting here holding resentment. A grudge. You're not, right? Because who's that harming at the end of the day? Instead, you're unbiased. You're zoomed out. You're saying, what are the variables?
I am thinking like that.
You're doing emotional detective work.
My dad's dad drank, things like this. So I'm just like so obvious. Like, okay, but that takes a lot of curiosity to get to that point. And you know what? Nowadays, guys, I'm telling you, sign up for get therapy, but if you're scared to talk to someone, the first step could be looking inward, could be just talking to ChatGPT about being like, hey, ask me some questions. She's not going to agree with this, obviously.
I love ChatGPT. I use it, but I think human connection is a different ballgame.
No, I think that it's about looking inward though, being curious and starting that curiosity conversation and then moving on, right?
Rolling,
I didn't have that.
You were saying something about Lululemon. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
When you walk into Lululemon, I actually did a course with someone was one of my classmates who they were very, very progressive in a lot of ways. One of the projects that they wanted to do was around Lululemon and some other big companies not making the right sizes for people. Some people are overweight. And I look at, and I think of this as the same conversation as my dad saying, you aren't going to be able to achieve that. I kind of was going to say, I kind of missed it now. I'm like, oh man, I wish my dad would be like, you're never going to be able to do that because I'd be more motivated to go do it. It's almost like it was good. But the same thing applies when I walk into Lululemon. If I see a shirt that looks freaking good on a freaking mannequin that's got muscle and standing there with good posture, and then I go to the fitting room and I put it on and I'm like, oh my God, I've gained some weight. I got to figure this out. I don't mind that sort of, what do you want to call that? A signal.
And that's why I think, okay, here's what I might be interpreting this incorrectly, but I think a lot of times when someone's a mental health practitioner, it seems like they're going to be like heavy on the gentle parenting. They're going to be heavy on like, coddle kids, be soft, be nurturing, let the kid cry and all that. I don't think one extreme to another is appropriate. I don't think physical discipline's right. I don't think being heavily permissive is right either. I think it's important to be balanced and to have your own, the main cardinal rule is have your own stuff sorted out first.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
There's a new term actually I heard the other day from a podcast. Emotional incest.
Oh gosh, never heard of that.
Yeah. What the hell?
So what that is, basically parents who are instead of like reaching out to counselors, stuff like that, they're dumping all their emotional, all the stuff
goodness.
onto the
wow,
kids.
that's really good way of putting it.
But the term we use is enmeshment.
Enmeshment?
But
Okay,
that's
okay.
a lot.
I like that
That's more catchy.
I like
Yeah,
that
that's
one
way
better.
catchy.
It sounds a
You
little
guys
weird.
are
No,
gonna
no,
do
I don't
that.
think it's
You guys are gonna see that on my next TikTok.
Right?
I'm gonna steal your term. No, I'm
Yeah.
joking. I'm joking. Imagine putting that in Punjabi.
yeah.
Oh,
God.
God, don't even,
I'm
please.
joking.
Yeah,
No,
Go on.
be the worst.
okay.
No, but
yeah.
but you
I
know
don't
what?
wanna know.
I've you know, I actually know of some people who are like that.
Totally.
Because
They're
the parents
family
are so
therapist.
they've never had their sort of emotional needs nothing met,
Yeah.
a relationship, whatever, and now the kids
Yeah.
are older or even younger. They're dumping everything on their kids. Where that relationship with the parents is
100%.
supposed to be, you're supposed to listen to their stuff. They're not supposed to
it's
be
a
there
role
listening
reversal.
to role reversal.
That's big. Parentification, role reversals, absolutely. That
Right?
happens so much in the culture.
Another thing, if someone's watching right now and
Yeah.
they've never gone to therapy before, because I know a lot of people, if I said, bro, you need therapy, like, what the fuck you talking
It's
about?
like an
especially guys,
insult,
for guys.
right?
So
For
I
guys.
think they don't know what therapy is. So if you could just maybe in a
Yes.
roundabout way say, hey, listen,
Roundabout way.
yeah, explain to me in Punjabi. But if you
Yeah.
could just put it out there, say, listen, it's safe. Obviously, there's privacy. No one's gonna be talking.
Yeah,
because
it's
in our community, we're always
confidential.
worried like, oh my god, everyone's got a best friend. They're gonna tell somebody.
You know what breaks
right?
my heart? In the Punjabi community, there is still a belief that exists that if you go get help for your mental health, it's going to be a deterrent to go get a job. There's going to be some sort of record of it, and you're gonna be held back in life for it. Whereas it's the opposite, really. If you're someone who's taking care of your stuff, you're going to be that much more efficient of an employee somewhere. You're going to be that much more of a well-balanced partner and parent. And so it's that stigma definitely exists, and it's understandable. But that's why a lot of practitioners, they do free consultations. So if you don't know, shoot off some emails to people that you think you resonate with. Usually, it's a good idea to have someone in your age range. And cultural background is important. I myself have spoken to mental health practitioners who were from different cultural backgrounds, and there was so much lost in translation, so many gaps, and I spent a lot of time just trying to like explain. And I hear that a lot from clients is they'll be like, man, what a game changer it is to just speak to someone who just gets it. So definitely do free consultations and see what it's all about.
100%,
Every therapist is different modalities. There's CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. There's somatic therapy. There's EMDR, where they're using like eye movements, and it's a very like high tech type of thing. There's so many different kinds of things out there, and it's just about being curious.
So, first-time parents, immigrant parents, I'm going to talk more about, or even parents from here, just people having pregnancies very, very young. Accidents, you want to call them, or whatever it is, right? Unplanned pregnancies.
Pleasant surprises.
Pleasant surprises, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of these kids, they're kids themselves. They know nothing about parenting. Like, is there something from a policy perspective that our government could do better to make sure these parents are not just equipped to like have, go through the pregnancy, go.
Are you talking about
yoga.
like teen pregnancy?
Teen
What are you
pregnancies, or
talking
even
about?
like early adult, like, where people do not have a clue about parenting. It's just there's no book to read, but I'm sure there's some sort of books a parent could read to make sure that they're raising a child that's going to be a productive member of society and not being some kid who's going to be ending up, in a life of crime.
I read some good books. I really liked Buddhism for Mothers. I don't remember the author's name, but that was really nice. The Whole Brain Child is a nice parenting book. It explains what's the right way to correct behavior, what's the right way to be attuned and see through their lens. That's a really nice one. But I do think it just starts with the parent themselves. If they go do the work, then
a lot of parents don't do the work.
No,
it's all
they
learned
don't
behaviors from the
realize-
way they've been raised, or
yeah.
they've seen their cousins get raised, and now they're raising the next generation with the same sort of values. And
values, yeah.
and even even a lot of kids in foster care, low income housing and whatnot as well too.
Yeah.
They grew up in rough environments.
Yep.
And then they're having kids, and
all-
we just think that everyone's gonna raise normal, healthy
It's
kids.
intergenerational trauma you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, like, from a policy perspective, is there something that
There's
Nothing,
stuff
right?
out there. Well, no, I mean,
They can't stop you from having kids.
not
No,
having
no,
kids,
I
but I
think-
think just give them some sort of classes or
There
whatever.
are
like,
some, but
What?
this there are like sex ed classes in school.
Well, that's to
Yeah,
prevent it.
yeah, it's to
right.
prevent
I'm
it.
thinking once a woman's already pregnant, like baby's coming.
There's
Oh.
classes you go to, but that's more for the physical. Yeah, I suppose there's no emotional prepared
Start it.
classes.
Yeah,
start that as a business.
Honestly, if I had a magic wand, right?
Oh boy, if I had one.
Parenting 101. Why don't
No.
you should do that?
Yeah.
Branch off.
No.
Parenting 101
Listen,
with Mindy.
I'm not the best parent myself, but I would say government, if they're going to be giving, child tax benefit, whatever it is,
You qualify for it?
to
Okay.
single mothers
I
with
get
any
what
sort
you're
of
saying.
background, that
Yeah.
they should have take some course, parenting courses.
Okay.
That should be mandatory.
Mandatory counseling, basically, is what
Right.
you're saying.
Sure, whatever. Counseling or
Usually,
some
what you're saying is it should be proactive. Right now, it's reactive.
Yeah.
Usually, what happens is something will go wrong in the home. Ministry gets a report.
Yeah.
Social workers involved, and then they do mandated 6-month
Mm-hmm.
counseling. And so there are programs, but it's all reactive. There's not much proactively. But that's where I think there needs to be a shift in the idea of how important it is to have the title of being a parent. I don't think that is emphasized enough, that is such an important job, and that it needs to be reframed. A lot of times, especially in the Punjabi culture, children are minimized, invalidated. No one's attuned. No one's paying attention until the kid gives you something to pay attention to. And then again, it's reactive at that point, and then it's an uphill battle.
So how do you do the what were you saying, proactive? I think you were saying like to get to the solution before the reaction happens. How do you do that? Because like
That's
with
where,
every- yeah.
yeah, counseling therapy is so important. I think everybody should go to therapy. Everybody, you won't, unless it's like an unethical practitioner, you won't walk away worse off. You'll walk away with some sort of insight, clarity, development, some sort of focus. It'll never subtract. It'll only add value. It's just like going to the gym. It's a mental gym. People are all about that. Physical health.
There's been an
fitness.
increase of online therapy. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm a virtual practitioner.
Virtual practitioner?
Yeah, I don't know
So
in person.
how is that? Like, have you done like in person prior to that, or
Not as a registered clinical
half
counselor,
hour ago she did.
but as
Keep it.
What you say?
So I know a lot of people are apprehensive about doing online therapy because they're like, oh, like, it doesn't feel real and I don't feel like they'll be able to understand me.
yes.
What would you say to those people? Because I know everyone always wants to do face-to-face now, but obviously with time restrictions and everything, and some counselors are available
Yeah.
online. So what would you have to say to that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits to online therapy as well. One, it's going to take up less time. There's no travel time. You just kind of need a private
Less barriers.
space.
Less barriers.
Yeah, and you are usually more relaxed in your own environment. So there's accessibility there. There's going to be a safer feeling. You're going to be more relaxed. It's just more convenient. And even like I use a physical modality. I've never had anyone say this needs to be in person. It's not working. I've only ever heard like, wow, that was so helpful. That was like, I've heard I did not expect this to
Yeah.
do anything. And I was skeptical. And maybe they walk into it biased and apprehensive and guarded. But I don't see it as a barrier. I think all of us got really skilled at the online thing during COVID. That was the reason I started online. And then I honestly just didn't see a need to switch it to in person. Maybe one day I do have an eventual goal to do like group healing,
Yeah.
like healing.
Like this? Just joking. Go ahead.
like healing workshops.
Yeah.
And I'm writing a self-guided somatic therapy workbook. So that once I'm done that, then I'll get the whole in-person thing going. And I'm excited about that because I feel like that's just the natural next step. I won't ever stop doing the virtual counseling. But yeah, I mean, my main thing is I love being able to connect with people in my language, in Punjabi. I think that's huge. I love when someone is like so skeptical. And then you just see the click in their eyes, the light bulb moment, and like, okay, they're benefiting from this. It's validating. It's why I keep doing it. It's excellent.
I think it is important to acknowledge, though, and I think you can agree that maybe the first therapist you talk to might not be the right therapist for you.
Yeah.
I don't know I know people that have done therapy, and when the therapist move or they have to change they have to change a therapist, it's quite difficult too for people.
Yes.
And I think I know that people I've spoken with, to find someone else that fit that kind of fit them. I think you have to be open to, it's almost a little bit like dating too. Like if you can do those free consultations,
to be
just
the
because
right
the first one
fit.
doesn't go well. Some of them may not
it can put you off because you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
The shoe's been on the other foot. I don't have a practitioner that I have a good rapport with. I haven't been able to find that. But I think it's okay if you're not everybody's fit. Like I can suss that out. And then it's our ethical duty and obligation to refer them out and be like, you know what, you would benefit more from like in-person this and this and this, or EMDR or CBT. And every practitioner has like a long list of ethics and guidelines that they need to abide by and adhere to. And that's why it's such a safe space. It's very protected. It's serious. You can't have any dual relationships. You're like... schoolmates parent can't be your mental health practitioner.
No, of course,
you can't have any conflict of interest. Whereas you can go golfing with your doctor, you can be friends with your lawyer, but because of protecting what the therapeutic space is, there's a lot of rules.
I think that's part of what also makes me a little bit uncomfortable too, is just like I want to be connected with the person, I want to have that connection.
Some people are like that. They want disclosure.
Which is why I think self-help, I have a really good relationship with myself now through this process.
You're your own therapist.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't go as far as that. But where I was going to say is what we've talked about today, a lot of it has to do with the fact that we as men, when we freaking sprain our ankle, when we have a freaking torn ACL, is it ACL? Torn ACL? Or if it's any type of wound that's physical, you know what, us as guys, we'll sit there, we'll say, hey, damn,
Walk it
are you good? Are you good? No, we'll be
chat
there.
about
We'll
it.
definitely be like, damn, what happened? Oh, you were playing, it's physical. Okay. Us men are extremely, there's no denying it, aware when we feel emotional pain or that gut thing in our stomach.
Yeah.
Okay. We are aware that when we feel that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. However, we choose to ignore it. We choose not to talk about it. We choose to push it away in any which way that you've already described.
Yeah.
I think that the first step, based on what I'm hearing here, is acknowledgement that, okay, this feeling I have is not going to move or
Don't
change.
repress it.
And it's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
And I should just Google it. I should look into it. I should go on, start looking on Reddit or whatever to see what other people are saying. Go to a therapist.
I was gonna say, or just go to a
don't go to Reddit.
No,
Reddit's
but people are scared to do that. I'm being real. People are scared to do that.
When you're walking and you stub your toe, let's say you got up from here, you stub your toe, what are you gonna intuitively do? You're gonna grab your foot, you're gonna apply pressure. The same goes for emotional hurts. We have to acknowledge it because it does, you feel that gut thing. You feel the weight on your chest or the lump in your throat when you're about to cry, or when you're angry, you might furrow your brow, right? In Punjabi, we say tiriyan. Or we might clench the jaw, ball up our fists. That's all physical cues that something needs to be tended to. So the same way we know if you apply pressure or you massage it out, you give some sort of physical response to a physical pain, we have to do the same thing for emotional pain that's showing up as a physical sensation.
And when I look at a guy that watches this, even a clip of this, and goes, these guys are pussies. These guys are fucking losers.
Yeah.
These guys are fucking soft. No.
Yeah.
People are going to say that.
Yeah.
And guess what? I'm going to go and watch somebody's video and go, man, you're such a loser. I might say that about something I see online. I'm acknowledging this to say when someone does say something like that, the zoom out thing you mentioned earlier about my dad, I zoom out and I go, oh man, that guy has issues internally that he hasn't dealt with.
It's never personal. That's okay. Another thing I always say
it's
is
internal.
timing.
You're not gonna keep everyone happy. That's just the way it is.
No, but you know what? That same guy,
you're projecting.
maybe one year down the road, he's gonna
evolve.
He's gonna recognize it. So timing is so key. This is why I don't like doing mandated therapy where people are forced into the scene because they're not gonna show up and want to do the work. But where someone's like really readiness for change and accountability and self-reflection, that's a game changer. And then that's a cool space to be with someone. And I think it's okay. We've all been there.
But I'm just saying, I'm like, can you guys acknowledge it? Nine out of 10 guys that if they do watch this,
generalization, man.
No. I'm just saying are afraid to go and take action.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, I think it's just we're having this conversation today, and I am, this wasn't super uncomfortable, but if we kept going, it would have got more and more uncomfortable with our conversation. And like you've shared a lot of things that are, that have really messed you up in your childhood. And I think that,
Not today.
Not today. Yeah, not today. You're going to...
Episode 1.
Yeah. But my point is,
Yeah.
I'm just acknowledging that most guys that are going to watch this realistically are going to brush over it. And I want to take a moment to just say that freaking grief, that guilt, that shame. That, what are the other emotions? List them that I missed.
Just lots of fear, sadness,
sorrow,
all of that. It's hanging out.
It's hanging out, and it's there to for you to figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you figure that out, my goodness, guys.
Yeah.
You're gonna have better parents. You're gonna have better children. You're gonna have happier relationships. It's actually within you. You can't find that partner. Guess what? I spent 7 years, alone, questioning why I'm upset, why am I mad, why am I this, why am I that, questioning it to the point now where I know, where I can be like, I know what's bothering me. It will pass. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Let's keep moving along here.
Yeah.
And then only then what I feel and do I feel comfortable to have a partner and go, okay, I can bring something to the table here that's gonna make this relationship not toxic, essentially.
Yeah.
And I'm quickly able to now identify when someone has not worked on themselves on a first date. It's very easy to see when someone is going through it. And like, I'll give you a quick, well, I'm not even going to it, but I've just seen it. And I've seen messages that are sent to me after that are like projecting, not mad, where they're like trying to make it like,
and you can
this.
hold space for
And
that,
you're, and it's like, okay,
'Cause
cool.
Everybody's on a different wavelength,
Yes,
different level of EQ.
But I'm just thinking,
and that's not personal.
majority of the 9 out of 10, if I'm going to generalize and say 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, majority of
People
guys that are gonna say that they're not going to do anything, they're going to go into that date and they're not going to recognize those things because they haven't recognized them for their own self. So guess what? You get into that relationship, you go, oh, this girl's actually really nice. She likes me. Oh my God, she likes me. Oh my God. And it's the same thing for the girl. Oh, actually, this guy's actually like tall and handsome, or oh, he's got that job, or he's got that family. I really like, or he's got the religion. There'll be what the girl's looking for and the guy's looking for. Most of the time, guys in these situations are just looking for any girl to give them a chance. Most guys, that's also a big part of men's mental health, is they can't find a girl and they go down the dark path of thinking that they'll never get one. Girls don't have that type of problem most of the time. Majority of guys are oftentimes like, oh my God, I can never find a girl.
If you don't do the work, if you don't look inward, you might end up in a bad relationship.
You will.
You won't be able to catch the signs. And so it's important to do the work. But, again, this is where it's okay. Whoever's watching this, planting seeds. Something's better than nothing. Even if they dismiss 99% of it, that 1% might click, and it might be the thing that makes all that much more difference. Positive domino effect, change in the trajectory. So that's what resources are all about. You're never going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay, as long as there's something positive to graze from it. It doesn't have to be grand transformative change.
You have to have your own cup of tea first before you're going to be someone else's cup of tea.
Yep.
You got to drink your own tea.
That's a good summary.
Right. So, Amrita, thank you so much for being here today. We really, really appreciate you taking the time. We kind of did go all over the place, a lot of different topics that we went over. I think there's so much more that we're probably going to dive in future episodes, maybe with you and even without. And just any final thoughts that you want to share to the audience that maybe has never heard of you before, because I don't think that you've done a podcast in English yet.
No, I haven't. Not for a long time, and not about mental health for sure. But I think it's cool that you guys are doing this. I think a lot of times what you see in podcasts is strictly entertainment, laughs, and that has its place. That's an important thing too. And you guys weave that in as well. But it's cool that you guys talk about the serious stuff, the important stuff, and that's what it's all about. If you've attained knowledge along the way, it's about sharing that knowledge and maybe helping someone spark a change in their own minds and their own hearts. And that's cool.
Do you want to let anyone know where to find you, online on social?
Yeah. So the best thing is email. My email's contact@therapycovecounseling.com. On Instagram, therapycoveco. But email is always best. And
we'll put it on the description as well. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's
Thanks so
awesome.
much.
Yeah. No,
Thanks so
thank
much.
you. Honestly, I wasn't expecting this. You explained everything so well. You gave me a lot of insight as well too.
He wasn't expecting. You saw the aha moments
I was like,
over and over again.
Yeah, you know what?
Yes.
You were really eloquent the way you spoke and everything. Yeah, just thank you. I'm sure people watching will benefit from it for sure.
I hope so.
And that's all it is. It's about just supporting one another
Yeah.
and making sure people know that they have resources. They have
Yes.
people they
You're
can
not
talk
alone,
to.
and you're not
Yeah,
alone.
You're not alone.
Yes.
Every single
Everyone is
person,
going through
Yeah.
stuff.
every single
Yeah.
person, including like the practitioner that you might work with, is
Yeah.
going through it. That's what also makes me
Yes.
feel a little bit more like, hey, everyone
Yeah.
has an insecurity.
gotta
So guess
normalize
what?
it.
I have an insecurity. Guess
Yeah.
what? You have an insecurity. You have an insecurity, and it's okay.
Yeah. It's not
okay.
the end of the world.
It's like it's fine.
We're
You just gotta deal with
forever
it.
evolving human beings. That's
Yeah,
all
and,
it
and even
is.
for me being like younger on this podcast, like for hearing these things and like knowing it from a younger, like knowing it at this age, like I think it'll benefit me like further on in life.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's
Yeah.
just great to know all these things and obviously
It's a
to be
good
open to getting help and whatnot. And I completely suggest everything she's saying to every single person at even at whatever age you're at.
Start the journey. Take the
Start
first
the
step.
journey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Take the first
exactly.
step of looking inward. Take the first step of looking inward. Whether that's
Definitely.
calling the therapist, just going online, finding someone, whether it's
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, whether it's Reddit, whether it's going on TikTok and just
Not
trying to
Reddit.
find
Not
something.
Reddit.
Not Reddit.
No,
not
no,
Reddit.
no, I
dude.
think you
Sorry,
can.
keep going.
Dude,
No,
Reddit,
no.
like yo,
No,
my
I
arm's
think-
broken. What do I do?
No,
You're dead.
No,
you're alive.
No, I think if you go into the depths of Reddit and you find like
I
a
get what
community.
you're saying. You're saying just
Community.
the collective.
Or
That's-
it could be a
yeah,
Facebook group.
You can
I
find your
just think-
collective.
Yeah, yeah. So, anyways, thanks so much for tuning in this week, guys, and yeah, we'll see you next week.